They were at our library and they're doing a live animal show. I think it's called the Rapture Center. And it's gonna be nice.
Up to. We cannot be touching the birds today. You'll actually notice that I don't even pet these birds. They are not pets. They are just wild animals that have been trained to kind of teach with me. But I know it's really cool to know what these birds feel like, and so I'll be passing around some feathers that you folks can touch and feel, and just please be gentle with them, and I encourage you to wash your hands after the presentation today before eating. Those feathers are technically clean, but I always think it's best to wash your hands. Let's see what he's up to.
So guys, here's the feather. Oh my gosh.
And so if you guys have ever given a dog a treat before, then you have done positive reinforcement-based training. You're giving the dog a treat to let them know you want them to do that next time. And so we train our birds the same way with treats. And all of our birds have a choice, meaning that if they don't want to come on out, they don't have to. Thankfully, Cricket decided to come out, even though I gave him way too much food in the last presentation. So his motivation was waning a little bit. But now he is out and about and doing just fine. So when people think of predators, they often think of these large animals like sharks and lions and bears. But predators can come in all shapes and sizes, and smaller predators just eat smaller prey. And so this right here is the American kestrel, the smallest falcon we have here in North America, and one of my favorite species to interpret because out of all the birds you see today, you're probably the least familiar with this one. They are seasonal visitors to Minnesota, meaning that they migrate south to places like Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Texas in the winter, and then they come back to Minnesota in the spring and summer to take advantage of often our prairie habitat or just other open grassland. And so all of our raptors have 3 special adaptations on their body. Adaptations are just tools that animals have to help them do what they need to do. So if you guys give me a thumbs up, your thumb is an adaptation that helps you pick up, grab things, and climb. Or even our eyelashes are an adaptation, though fashionable and beautiful. They actually help keep dust, dirt, grime, and sweat out of our eyes. But for our birds, they have eyelashes too, actually. But for being a raptor, there's 3 things that they have to have. And the first one is they have these sharp claws called talons. Talons are thicker and stronger than the claws of other birds, and it allows our raptors to pick up their food. So today I'm giving him little pieces that I've already cut up so that he doesn't have to rip it on the glove, which can sometimes be tricky. Don't drop it, don't drop it. But when they actually catch something in the wild, the first time they grab something, they're gonna grab it with their talons, with their feet. It's kind of like their fork. The second thing is because birds like this will often eat prey that can't fit in their mouth in one bite, they have a nice hooked beak to help them rip apart their food into pieces they can swallow. So if you're really into animals and especially birds, looking at their body can give you clues as to what they're eating, like how a tiger or a lion or another animal that eats meat has sharp teeth. This bird has a hooked, sharp beak. Or even if you think of a bird like a hummingbird, they drink nectar, a liquid that comes out of flowers, and their beak is shaped like a straw to accommodate that. And so birds' beaks are one of my favorite things to nerd out about because they're just such a good clue as to what that bird is doing day to day in their life. And last but certainly not least, all of our raptors have fantastic eyesight. So most raptors can see a mouse on the ground from up to a mile away, and that allows them to spot their food, and also for a smaller species like this, possibly look out for danger or an invader in their territory. A lot of our raptors are extremely opportunistic, meaning that while some of them may have a favorite food, they're very often going to eat things outside of their normal diet, because when an opportunity presents itself, they will take advantage of it, just like how I will take advantage of free food most of the time as well. But kestrels, they tend to be best at catching small insects like moths, dragonflies, and butterflies, but they also will catch small mice or voles, or even other birds. And specific individual kestrels will sometimes get best at catching a certain prey item, but most of the Minnesota ones are known for migrating and actually following the migration patterns of the Darner dragonfly. You can see this species in a variety of habitats, but in Minnesota they do really like to nest in our prairies. or open grasslands next to agricultural fields. So even if it's not a full-fledged prairie with developed wildflowers and such, they really like those open spaces. And so you guys are actually in an area that's better to see kestrels than where I live in Minneapolis. So kudos to you. It's very fun to find them. And one hint you're seeing one of these beautiful birds is that they'll sit on the telephone wires and they'll bob their tails up and down. A lot of birds, if a gust of wind comes, they'll move their tail to help them balance. But even when a kestrel is sitting still, they'll sometimes just choose to bob their tail, and that's a hint that it may be one of these birds, because only a few bird species are doing that while they're just chilling. Kestrels also can be hunting in a couple different ways. So a lot of our raptors like to sit and wait when they hunt, meaning that they are sitting and waiting for the right moment to fly down and grab something. And so for kestrels, when they hunt in an open space, sometimes they have access to a place to perch, to stand and wait, and sometimes they going up, down, left, or right. And hummingbirds are most famous for their ability to do this. They're the best at it. That's why they're so teeny tiny. It's really difficult to hover, and so being small is advantageous. But for the kestrel, they hover a little differently than the hummingbird does. They will fly into a big gust of wind, holding their wings kind of at a diagonal. And then that allows them to briefly float above, often like tall grass, and look down into it before finding an animal to eat. And one cool feature about the kestrel that I'll show you guys is if you look under his eyes, he has these two black stripes. When have we seen people do that? When have we seen people put black under their eyes?
Football players.
Yeah, do you know why
Baseball
they do it?
players, because it keeps the sun out of their eyes.
Yes, and so kestrels, they have these stripes. They're called mallard stripes for the same reason. Fantastic job. And I actually didn't know that until I worked at the Rapture Center. I thought football and baseball players were just looking cool, but it actually serves a purpose. I mean, of course, it does look pretty cool, right? In my opinion, at least. But for the kestrels, they have black under their eyes for the same reason, kind of built-in sunglasses to reduce glare, or that feeling when the sun is in your eyes. And it's because, again, they hunt in open spaces, and in Minnesota, prairies are very sunny places. About them communicating with each other. In this situation, it's probably him just trying to double check the distance something is away from him. So being able to guess how far away something is, and he'll bob his head to kind of test his depth perception a little bit. And it might just be a sign also that he's pretty relaxed and looking around.
What's the injury this bird has?
Cricket was, and so you'll meet two of the birds with a similar story today. We have two birds today, this bird and the next, that were exposed to humans too much at a young age. Cricket was actually being illegally kept as a pet. These raptors are not pets. You can, if you're really interested in having an intimate relationship with a raptor, then I suggest looking into falconry. It is a very huge commitment, but just taking one of these birds out of their nest is not legal, and is what happened to Cricket, unfortunately. And he was with that gentleman for about 6 months, and that's a crucial time for them to learn for their parents. And so Cricket, though physically healthy, he can't hunt on his own because he didn't really have that time to learn from his parents like most wild raptors would. And the next bird, he has a similar story, except that person was just trying to rescue him. They were just trying to feed him until he was all grown up and then release him, not knowing that you can't do that. But one thing I wanted to show you guys, and actually for you to hear, is something about the feathers of my next bird. So kestrels, they're sitting and waiting, and they're able to use their speed to get down to their prey when they're hunting, relying on that speed quite a bit. But my next bird is quite slow in flight, and so has a different strategy for hunting, and that strategy is being very sneaky or stealthy. Hopefully our young friends in the room aren't too sneaky for their age, but being sneaky, of course, can be helpful in a game of hide and seek. So I can take this one falcon feather, and if we all listen for a second, you can hear that little noise?
Yeah.
It's not that loud, but if you were a mouse and you heard that, what would you do?
Run.
Right, run, right? Because a falcon would eat a mouse. This bird would eat a mouse too, except when it flies, its feathers are completely silent. It makes almost no noise, and even if I flap it a little too hard, it might make a little noise, but this bird can't flap as hard as my arm can. He only weighs 3 pounds. And you'll notice when you feel these feathers too, this one's gonna be a lot softer, And on a microscopic level, it's just fraying a lot more. So think of it like a paintbrush instead of like a smooth spoon or something. And so all this fraying allows for the feather to sound. So this is not just a picture of a tree, this is a picture of a bird. Only it's very well blended in. Can I see it?
Yeah.
I'll point to it in a second.
Can you see it?
It's not easy. This is a pretty tough one, I'm not gonna lie.
It's one of my favorites.
But if you look right here,
Is it an owl?
his eyes are right here. And he has them like this, so that you don't see his eyes. So right here, this is an eastern screech owl. It's an owl that's about this big. I have a bigger owl with me today, but they both can camouflage in an amazing. Since I first started at the Rapture Center, a cricket, the kestrel, he's only about 3 years old. This guy is 22, and I met him, when he would have been about 16 or 17, and I would have been 19. So I've been working with him for a couple years. Introducing my dear friend Bubo.
Bubo?
Yes. So all of our wild animals, from a little snail to actually even plants, they have scientific names, and then they have common names, meaning you call a maple tree, but it actually has a name that's in Latin. And so for owls, they all belong to the family Bubo, and so it's kind of a common owl name in zoos and places like us. But he is one of a kind to me, that's for sure. And do you guys know what type of owl he is? Anyone know? Any guesses? Do you know what type of owl this is?
A sloth owl.
Ooh, close. That's a very common owl species in Minnesota. This is the great horned owl, named after these feathers that are kind of half sticking up on his head, but not all the way. It's because he's quite comfortable right now, but he would stick them up if he was nervous. He's looking at his own feather. Ooh, you're good. Minnesota is lucky to be one of the few states that has quite a bit of owl diversity. We have 12 different owls that visit Minnesota, but this is by and far believed to be the most common. And that's because great horned owls are really good at holding their territory, meaning keeping their home to themselves and not letting other owls infiltrate it. And they're also quite adaptable. So this bird will live in an open space like the kestrel. It will live in a forest. It will live in your neighborhood. Say goodbye to Bubo. And like I said, if you want to check out that owl wing afterwards, feel free to. Yeah, there he goes, into his little car seat. Thanks, bud. Getting lots of food today. Very important on that holiday, and I also have a feathered from one as well. Thank you. Yes, it is a huge glove, so bigger glove, bigger crate, probably gonna be a bigger bird. And I just ask that everyone remain still. It is gonna be a raptor. It's gonna be the biggest raptor that you will see today, and possibly in your lifetime, at least this up close. Let's see what my friend Gladdy is up to.
Bald eagle. Knew it.
You know what bird this is?
Yeah, that's a bald eagle.
Yes, it is a bald eagle. This bald eagle's name is Gladdy. And my favorite fun fact about, not bald eagles, but Gladdy individually, is he is 27 years old, older than I am. So he's been doing these programs at the Rapture Center for a long time. And he is a permanent resident because if you can see his right wing, oh, Gladdy, there we go.
Was that so funny?
He pooped, yeah. Yeah, raptors, they go number 1 and number 2 are actually all birds at the same time. Everyone has to go sometimes. But so Gladdy is a permanent resident because long ago he was struck by something, very likely a car, and so you can see his right wing, the ring closest to my body, is kind of hanging low, not really up against his body, whereas this wing is how a bald eagle's wing normally would be. And bald eagles need really powerful forced flight to fly down and catch a fish. And our veterinarian did everything they could to heal his wing, but there are some wing injuries that can get pretty extreme and unable to be fixed because birds' bones are just so fragile. So his bones are completely hollow. And so Gladdy was deemed an education bird instead, and thank God he's responded really well to our training. And has been having a nice, happy, long life so far. We do, with a bird like this, living longer than their wild counterparts, we do take their health very seriously. Young bald eagles, they're not good at catching fish yet, and so they may eat a squirrel or a rabbit or something else when they are young, and then as they get older and they watch their parents catch fish and they try catching fish and fail and try again and fail until they get really good at it. They practice was the word I was looking for. That is when bald eagles will tend to go for fish for most of their lifetime. Except here in Minnesota in our winter, right? Our lakes and rivers freeze. And so during that time of the year, the bald eagles actually become scavengers, going after animals that have already passed away, kind of like our vultures do. And they'll eat anything that has meat on it during that time of the year. Eat it like spaghetti, you don't want the rat tail? He is not that hungry today. You gotta rip it?
Mom, you love this.
Gotcha. So he's gonna demonstrate how, oh, no, you don't want that piece. All right, well, we'll get you a new one at the Rapture Center. Then I don't want you to eat food. But back to bald eagles, the other thing we always get asked, or at least as a bird watcher, I get friends, they'll send me a picture and I go, oh my God, it's a golden eagle. And they'll send me a picture of an eagle soaring in the sky and it has a brown head and a black beak. And if you're in the southern United States or even out west, it might be a golden eagle. But here in Minnesota, we very rarely see that species. But what we do see is young bald eagles. So a bald eagle has a brown head and a black beak for its first few years of life, and then it develops the white head and the yellow beak at the age of 5. Yeah.
It's funny they're called a bald eagle because they're not really bald.
That is funny. And you want to know why they're called that? So in Old English, when people first came to the United States, they didn't say all of the same words that we did. Think about like how Shakespeare talked. And one of the differences was the word bald actually used to refer to the word or the color white. So they're called bald eagles because bald used to mean white, and they are known for having their white head, which is unique here in North American eagles. A fun fact about Minnesota is we have the second largest bald eagle population thanks to our land of 10,000 lakes and many rivers. So we hope you guys can help continue to support our bald eagle populations just by visiting lakes and rivers and following the rules as far as invasive species go, cleaning your boats, making sure trash doesn't end up in our bodies of water, or better yet.
How much does he weigh?
Weighs about 8 pounds, but it's near the end of the week here, so sometimes you see me supporting my arm. He's not the heaviest. He might be the lightest eagle we have at the Rapture Center, so I'll take it. Our female bald eagle can get up to, I think, 11 or 12 pounds, and she's a female from Lutz in Minnesota, really far north. So these birds vary in weight based on where they're at. So the Alaska bald eagles are some of the largest, and then the bald eagles in the southern states will actually be smaller, and it's just due to being able to regulate, their body temperature in different settings. So they'll have more fat on their body as they go north and less as they go south.